Asian American who was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. I lived briefly in Shanghai, China, and then for 2 years I lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now I live in Dallas, Texas, and I thought I would talk about my Asian American identity journey, as well as how the different places that I've lived shaped my identity, especially during this time where Asian American or Asian discrimination worldwide is prevalent because of coronavirus. I just thought that it was time for me to openly talk about my experiences. I know that when I hear other people talk about their upbringing, especially if they're of Asian heritage, I always feel like I can relate. And so I thought I would share my story. My mom is from Thailand and my dad's from Korea, so even though I'm full Asian, I definitely went through a stage of trying to figure out my identity growing up because Thai culture and Korean culture are pretty different. I grew up with my mom and my mom's side of the family. The first couple of years of my life I lived in Bangkok, Thailand, and so I grew up in touch with my Thai side, but with my Korean side, I didn't grow up with my dad. I didn't learn to speak Korean, but my mom made sure that I went to Korean church in like middle school and that I had Korean friends, eating Korean food, and she made sure to expose me to a lot of different like ethnic cultures because Chicago is so diverse. There was a time in my childhood that I felt like I had to prove to people that I was Korean because I didn't feel like I looked Korean and I couldn't speak it, and so that was something that I was insecure about. Growing up in Chicago, I had Asian friends. I didn't live in the Asian ethnic enclaves in Chicago, but my mom made sure that I was involved in the programs that were there, and so I was around Asians growing up. I remember having Asian teachers from elementary school to middle school to high school. Going back and forth from Chicago to Thailand, I struggled with my identity because in Thailand, colorism and being light-skinned is praised and valued, and skin bleaching cream is sold everywhere and openly. Like all the advertisements there showed half European or half white, half Thai, half Asian people, and so that was the standard of beauty, and I knew that I didn't fit that, and so there was a time I wanted to be half white because that's what was glorified in Thailand, and I'm naturally darker skinned from my Thai family members. I was always hearing, stay out of the sun, or like, even if they didn't tell me directly, I would hear how they would talk about Thai celebrities, like, oh, she's pretty for being dark, or she'd be prettier if she was lighter, and that affected my psyche. Growing up, when my mom would speak Thai to me, I'd be kind of embarrassed and want to speak English, and I had diverse friends, so it wasn't like I was the only Asian person in my school or in my classroom. Like, there were several other people of Asian descent growing up, but I still felt embarrassed. Like, I felt like I had to assimilate to being American and to try to prove that. I feel like in my childhood a lot of racialization, or just like a covert type of racism or microaggressions, it'd be a lot of the times people would ask me, where are you from? Like, where's your family from? Where are you really from? Growing up, I didn't experience blatant racism. No one was ever called name calling, and I don't remember if they were. It wasn't until I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma after college, and I was a middle school math teacher, that I heard some of the racial insults and comments and the taunting. And so I think that in my childhood, I was pretty lucky that in middle school, when kids are arguably the meanest, I didn't hear those racial insults, and I wasn't meant to feel out of place in that way. But I definitely experienced that moving to a smaller city that had a smaller Asian population, and the students that I taught were pretty homogenous. I taught in North Tulsa, so a lot of the students were Black, Native American. They weren't familiar or used to seeing an Asian person. I would have to explain to them why saying chink or ching chong or ling ling or any of the songs that had racial undertones to it why that was offensive, and they would argue back to explain to them, yeah, like songs can be offensive, movies can be offensive. And in my first year I was just so shocked at all of the outright racism and just feeling out of place, because I'd never really felt like that before in Chicago, Thailand, or when I lived in China. So I think that was the first time that I was like in shock about the fact that my Asian identity made me feel out of place. It took my first year of teaching to like build up the courage to address it with students, and in my second year of teaching I decided to teach my students during Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I had a little presentation. Hopefully that's something that they remember, and when they meet another Asian person, that they don't carry the stereotypes, or that they don't assume things because of what they've seen on television and movies. And I would say that in recent times, representation of Asians has definitely grown in Hollywood and American media. I remember growing up when I was younger, everyone comparing me to Lyndon Tipton or Brenda Song from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and how I played into that. I played into wanting to like be the stupid Asian just because I was aware of the model minority stereotype of being the smart Asian, and that was problematic too, that I ever even pretended to be dumber or slow. And then once I lived in China, I think things got confusing, because when I would tell people that I was American, people were just like, you're not American, you don't look American, no, you're Chinese. My mom's family is from China in terms of my grandpa, he was born in China, but I never felt in touch with my Chinese roots, even though my mom had me go to Chinese school ever since I was in like 3rd grade, and I would have to perform Chinese dances. I took Chinese classes in high school and college, and I minored in it, but it wasn't until my mom signed me up to go to this Seeking Roots Chinese summer camp that I really embodied being Chinese and wanting to improve my Chinese, because I didn't know any family members in China, and we didn't celebrate Chinese customs as a family. So the way that my mom introduced me to that was being a part of Chinese school and celebrating Chinese New Year with the school, and it wasn't like I felt like I had a direct connection to China. And so all of that is kind of how I was confused about my identity with being Thai. But then when I would go to Thailand, some of my family members would be like, you're acting very American, or you're too American, just because of my personality or my beliefs. And then when I was in the States, I didn't feel fully American. I didn't celebrate Thanksgiving. I didn't really celebrate Christmas growing up. And so I think that's why I always felt like the other or the outsider, because in Thailand, I wasn't Thai, and in the United States, I didn't feel fully American. When I went to China and I told people I was American, they would question me, so it was like, what am I? All of that's to say that parts of my life I've like questioned who I was, and I was embarrassed of being Asian briefly, and then went to the other end of the spectrum and became super proud of being Asian. In college, I was part of an Asian interest sorority, Delta Phi Lambda Sorority Incorporated. And going to China and living there, studying abroad there, and traveling the world. And it's always so interesting when I meet people of different backgrounds, because some of them, when I tell them I'm American, they're shocked, but others of them are like, oh yeah. To combat racism or discrimination, it honestly takes representation, putting yourself out there, asking questions, allowing people to ask you questions about how you were raised, or what your customs are, what your culture is, or what holidays you celebrate, or what's important to you. I decided to start like a series where I interview or just have a conversation with my Asian friends on their upbringing, as well as how living in different places or traveling to different places shaped how they view themselves and their identity. And so stay tuned for that, because I'm excited to better get to know my friends and their experiences. And so I really hope to put Asian American identity on the forefront, because I was always frustrated at the fact that I felt like only East Asian perspectives and narratives were highlighted in the US, and that's because of migration patterns here. Chinese, Japanese, and Korean immigrants were some of the first immigrants to the United States, but I do think it's important to get other perspectives, especially from Southeast Asians. That's the plan with this series, so stay tuned and thank you for watching.